We're still talking about irresistible happiness this month. Irresistible happiness. And today, the topic is the way of recasting. The way of recasting. But before I get into the recasting, just reminding you of the 3 C's of happiness: contentment, capability, and centeredness. That's how happiness is defined in the book, How We Choose to Be Happy by Greg Foster and Rick Hicks. Or it may be just the opposite, Greg Hicks and Rick Foster. But that's how it's defined in the book. Yeah, contentment, capability, and centeredness. And so what we're learning to do this month is just to be in that place of centeredness, be in that place of contentment, be in that place of capability so that happiness can find us. And so that we can find it, so that we are so irresistible that happiness just makes its way to us. And we make our way to irresistible happiness. And so we just open up and just allow ourselves to be in that place and that space. And because happiness doesn't always come easily, it doesn't, sometimes it's a challenge for us to get there. And that's what recasting is all about. Because, the winds of change blow continuously through our lives. Sometimes they blow gently and warmly, and sometimes they're cold and stormy. And when they're cold and stormy, that's when we really get into those difficult times, those difficult moments. And that's where recasting comes in. Recasting is from the steel mill industry, where a piece of a metal object is taken and melted down and then refashioned into something else. That's what recasting is all about. Melting a steel object, a metal object, and reshaping it, reforming it into something else. That's what we have to learn to do in our lives when the winds blow cold and stormy. We learn how to recast things. We learn how to reshape. We learn how to refashion things in our lives, how we refashion the way we look at our lives. Because when things change, we have a choice. And oftentimes, I'm talking about the kind of change that, when we compare it to steel, the kind of change that can be so seemingly intractable. Events happen that seem intractable, uncontrollable, overwhelming, something that is so hard to deal with, that it becomes, our emotions become set, and the event becomes intractable. Then our emotions become intractable. And then we find ourselves stuck, or feeling stuck anyway. And so what we have to do is to realize that even though we are going through this, even though there's a lot of difficulty, a lot of pain, a lot of excruciating pain maybe that we may be feeling, that we may be experiencing, that there is a choice that we have. We can choose to start to die, or we can choose to start to live, start to come alive. And that's not always an easy choice. Living is not always an easy choice, depending on what the situation may be. Because those kinds of intractable losses that we have, those kinds of intractable situations that we have, could come from death of a loved one, could come from a devastating illness, it could come from financial loss, it could come from divorce, anything that is really, really overwhelming to us, that feels really, really overwhelming to the point we feel like we can't come back from it. That's the kind of loss. That's where recasting really comes in, because recasting requires us to really look at where we are. And there are 2 parts to the recasting process. One is feeling our feelings, acknowledging our feelings, diving deep into those feelings that we have, diving deep into the pain, and then looking at how we can reshape it, looking at how we can reshape our lives, looking at what we can do about it, how we can still live effectively through whatever the intractable event may have been. And so I invite you to just take a breath and just be with this feeling this morning, because this community has gone through a recasting. We have gone through a period of loss, a period of change, a period of stormy kind of winds going through this community. And we have gone through things that seemed overwhelming to some people, that seemed uncontrollable to some people that still seem uncontrollable because a lot of changes are taking place here. A lot of change is happening. And so what we have learned to do is to be with it and to start to reshape it, to start to reshape our lives, to start to reshape our community. And this is what we have to learn to do in our own individual lives. And so when we're dealing with recasting, when we're dealing with something that feels so devastating, when something feels just totally out of control, the one thing we want to do is to dive deep, as I said, into the feelings. Dive deep into the pain. Do you know the only way to the other side is through? The only way to the other side is through. And I don't care what we try to do. I don't care how we try to go around it. I don't care how we try to jump over it. I don't care how we try to deny it. I don't care what we do. The only way to the other side is through. Just going through the pain. Diving deep into it, allowing yourself to feel whatever feelings you're having, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's grief, whether it's bitterness, whether it's blame, whatever those feelings are, being with those feelings, acknowledging those feelings, because we honor our emotions by feeling them rather than moving into denial about them, rather than doing a spiritual bypass and just saying, oh, God is all there is. Yes, that's true. God is all there is. And I'm in a lot of pain right now. Yes, God is all there is. And I'm really hurting. And I'm really feeling devastated by this diagnosis I just got at the doctor. Yes, God is all there is. And I'm really having a problem with this divorce that's going on in my life, or the financial ruin that I'm experiencing. And God is all there is. And I'm still feeling all this. That's where we have to be. That's how we have to deal with the things that come up in our lives. Just really acknowledging where we are. That doesn't mean wallowing. You get to wallow a little bit. Sometimes it helps, doesn't it? Just to get in your bed and just wallow. Just wallow in it. And then turn on the other side and just wallow some more. So I like to do that sometimes. Just wallow, and then say, I think I'll turn over to the other side now. And turn on the other side and see what it feels like from that side. But you know, that gets old after a while. It gets old after a while. And I'm saying this lightly, but I don't really mean it lightly. I really know how serious an issue this is for all of us, and the things that we go through in our lives, and particularly those things that come up unexpectedly. Those things, a sudden death, a sudden loss of any kind, whether it's love or whether it's money or whether it's children or whether it's the life of a loved one, whatever the case may be. A sudden change creates all kinds of havoc for us. And so what we have to do in that recasting process is to feel our feelings, and what we are doing when we do that, we are throwing these feelings, we're throwing this situation into that spiritual furnace so it can be melted down. So it can be melted down and then refashioned into something else, into something more. And so I invite you to be with wherever it is you are. Be with whatever the situation may be that you're experiencing. Be with that, knowing all the while that this too shall pass. Even though it doesn't feel like it right now, that can be your mantra. This too shall pass, and this too shall pass, but right now it doesn't feel like it's going to ever pass. Right now it doesn't feel like it's going to ever go away. And stay the course. Stay in the course. Stay in the course, being with it. You know, the important way to do that is to recognize that you don't have to do it alone. We don't have to be alone. We don't have to walk this journey alone. We have community, we have friends, and in this community, thank God, we have practitioners. We have practitioners to pray with us, to meet with us. We have ministers to help, that we can talk to, someone to help us, someone who can hold that space while we walk through it. And when I say holding space, that's what the two practitioners in the back who are holding the high watch are doing today. They're holding a space for the service, that we're in right now for the perfect unfolding of this service. And those same practitioners can hold a space for us to walk through that pain that we experience, for us to walk through that loss that we're experiencing, for us to walk through whatever it is that we're experiencing. There's someone there who can help us through that. There's someone there, there's community here that cares, there's community here with which we can connect. And so it's important for us to keep that in mind too, that we don't have to walk through these things alone. I've had several practitioners in my life in science of mind, religious science, and one of them, I think she's been my practitioner since 1990, 91. I'm so excited because I'm going to meet with her Thursday at 4 o'clock. I am going to meet, I can hardly wait till 4 o'clock Thursday. We have not been able to get our schedules together. At the time I met her, she was a practitioner. Then she went to ministerial school, then she had a church, and then she retired, and now she has a church again, and she's been my practitioner all these years. And I meet with her on a regular basis, and then there are times when we don't meet so often, and then, because life happens, and then we start to meet again. And you know what? Everybody needs to have a practitioner. Everybody needs to have someone who can hold that space. Everybody needs to have someone who can know the truth for you. And practitioners do more than pray for. They pray for us, yes, and they have a chance to have a full session and just listen to us and really get to help us to see what we can't see for ourselves. That's the important thing about recasting, is having someone to walk through whatever it is we're walking through with us and hold the space while we move through it. As we do that, the second thing we do after we dive into our feelings, the next thing we do is to really take a look at the situation and see what can I learn from this? What can I gain from this situation? What is there for me to learn here? What is the message for me here? How can I live my life in a way that I can still be effective in my life despite the fact that this situation happened, whatever that situation may be? Whatever that situation may be, how can I continue to live my life? We begin to see the value in our own feelings. We begin to examine our feelings, and we begin to learn more about who we are. If there's another person involved, we begin to learn more about who they are. If there's whatever the event may be, we begin to learn more about the event that happened. And as we learn more, the more we learn, the more capable we are of making decisions, making choices, and beginning to move forward more easily and more effortlessly. And again, this is not something that we have to do alone. This is not something that this is not a path that we have to walk by ourselves. As we do this, and I talk about practitioners because I love practitioners and I love being a practitioner. And I know that the important work that practitioners do in holding that space, in helping us to see the truth, and in praying for us, and to know that, help us to see that even in the midst of all this is going on, God is. Even in the midst of this pain that we're experiencing, God is. Even in the midst of all this change, and we don't know what's going to happen in the next moment, not that we ever do, but we think we do. But even though we don't know what's going to happen in the next moment, God already knows. God already has this. God's got this. And there's someone, we have like a cheerleader, someone there who's holding that space and knowing that God's got your back, even as you walk through this pain, even as you climb this mountain, even when you feel like I've been knocked down and I can't get back up. There's somebody who knows and who's holding that space for us to rise again. That's what recasting is about. That's what recasting is about. It's about really beginning to look differently at how can I live my life, even when we start to look at what's the value in this lesson, what is the lesson here, what's the value in it here, what's the message for me, what am I learning about myself. We have to also look at, even if this doesn't change, even if nothing changes, how can I continue with my life? Even if this situation stays the way that it is, how can I move forward in my life? How can I move forward in my life? And that's where our spiritual practice comes in. That's where our spiritual practice comes in. And I don't mean being positive. It's great to be positive, but sometimes being positive is a way of denial also. Sometimes being positive is, well, when you get a lemon, make lemonade. And you know, that's one way of doing it. And sometimes when you get a lemon, you just have to grab that lemon and hug it and hold on to it. And just hold on to it until eventually you begin to smell the fragrance of it. You begin to see the color of it. But at first, all you can do is hold on to it. At first, all you can do is hold on to it. And then as you go on down the road, as you continue to move forward, as you continue to put one foot in front of the other, as you continue to know that the power and the presence of God is right where we are, right where you are in any given moment, and that this too shall pass. As we continue to know that, then we can start to say, oh, this is a lemon, and it's yellow, and it's really pretty, and it's really fragrant. And it's really, whatever it is we think about lemons, and it makes good lemonade. But that's not always the first place that we go. And so having to be positive, having to keep up a stiff upper lip, having to put on a game face is not the way to go when we are dealing with those intractable events, those things that really knock us down, those things that are really difficult in our lives. The important thing is to learn to move through the difficulty with ease and with grace, and it doesn't feel like ease, but once we get to the other side, we can look back and say, I moved through that with ease and grace, and knowing that we don't have to, as I said, move through it alone. And so look at the recasting process. Look at, how can I recast this? It's like having a play, and you got one cast and that's not working, and then you bring in a whole new cast, and you have different people playing different roles. That's what recasting is about also. It's about starting all over again, starting anew, doing something in a different way. This is how we become open and receptive to happiness. This is how we become open and receptive to the happiness that Ernest Holmes defines as a consciousness of the goodness of God. Because as we walk through times like this, we become more and more aware. We become more and more conscious of the goodness of God. We become more and more conscious of inner peace in our lives. We become more and more consciousness of the possibilities in our lives. We become more and more aware that God is all that there is, that God is everywhere present, that God is working in and through every situation and circumstance. And as we become more and more aware of that, we become more and more aware of our connection and our oneness with this God that is in and through all things, knowing that God is in and through this situation and all situations in my life. And when I get into that place where I know that in the midst of this health challenge, in the midst of this loss, in the midst of this intractable event or situation in my life, I know that God is. And I've had someone holding that space for me all this time. As I said, with a practitioner, a friend, a therapist, whatever it is we're working with, whoever it is we're working with, who's holding that space, we get to the place where we can stand on our own 2 feet and hold the space for ourselves. And hold the space for ourselves. That's what we have done in this community. As we have moved through what seemed like intractable events, we are at a place where we're breathing easier, yeah? We're breathing easier. And we're moving forward, and we're beginning to open up, and we're beginning to recognize and to realize that God is all there is, and God is in the midst of all that's been going on here. Even at the times that it didn't seem like it, even at the times that we would forget it, even the times when the change seemed hard, recognizing and realizing that God is right here in the midst, that in the midst of all this change is the changeless. And the only thing that is changeless is God. And that's where our focus has to be. That's where our attention has to be. That's where that's the place on which our mind has to be stayed, on the power and the presence of God that is always in our midst, that is always, 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 always capable of taking care of everything in our lives, no matter what the situation may be, no matter what the circumstance may be, no matter what our fears may be, no matter how stuck we may feel, that God is right where we are. And knowing that truth, we can put one foot in front of the other, and one foot in front of the other, and one foot in front of the other, and one foot in front of the other. And that's how we make it through our lives, putting one foot in front of the other, knowing that each step is guided by the divine, that each step that we take is guided from on high, that each step that we take is ordered from on high. And we can take that step in faith, we can take that step in trust, we can take that step just knowing that even when we can't see the ground underneath our feet, there's that power and that presence that is the ground underneath our feet. There's that power and that presence, that's the presence that is the wing beneath our wings. There's that power and that presence that is always, always, always right where we are. When we are grounded in this truth, when we know this so much, so well, that there's nothing that can shake that for us, then we get to the place where we can start to look at, that was back there, and I am way up here. And we can start to look at what is it after we have had that deep dive into our feelings and start to look at how we can transform those into something meaningful. We can start to then ask the question, what is it that makes me really personally, authentically happy? What is it that makes me really happy? What is it that makes me happy even though this situation has happened? When we start to look at the things that are going on and the pain that we have experienced and all that, you know, there's always a spiritual quality that's seeking to reveal itself. There's always, underneath the pain, there's a spiritual quality that's always seeking to reveal. Underneath the sadness, there can be peace, peace of mind. Underneath the loss, there can be wholeness. Underneath the financial ruin, there can be abundance and prosperity. Underneath the health issues, there can be healing and wholeness. There can be love, and there can be joy, and there can be peace, and there can be harmony underneath all that stuff. And so when we start to dig deeper, we start to look at what is it that's seeking to express itself through me. And when we start to look at what it is that's seeking expression through me, in the midst of all this pain and this discomfort and difficulty that we may be experiencing, that's when we can start to say, what is it that makes me really happy? What is it that, if peace is seeking expression through me, what is it that I can do right now that's peaceful, that would make me feel that peace, experience that peace? If love is what it is that's seeking expression, what is it that I can do right now that can express that love? What is it that, how can that be expressed in a way that's beneficial to me and to all with whom I come in contact? What is it that I can do right now to experience the ease and the joy and the peace and the harmony and the balance and all of the gifts of the Spirit? What is it that will make me really happy? And it's that spiritual quality that's seeking expression that will start to come forth, that will start to emerge, that will start to reveal itself, that will start to show up in our lives, and we have a choice then to seek that out, to follow that path, to follow the path of peace, to follow the path of harmony, to follow the path of joy, to follow the path of love. And so I invite you to think about it. What's going on in your life today? What's been going on in your life, period, that's been difficult? What difficulty are you experiencing right now that you just need to just be with? What are the feelings that you need to just be with right now, that you may need to just wallow in a little bit? What are those feelings? And then once you begin to identify them, allowing yourself to be with them, allowing yourself to be with them, knowing that you don't have to do it alone. Reach out for help. Dive deep into your spiritual practice. Do your own spiritual practice. Do your own prayer. Do your own meditation. It helps a lot to write. It helps sometimes. It helps a lot to journal sometimes, just to get those feelings out. It's important for us to do all those things. And it's important, as I said, to have someone to help us walk through this difficulty, walk this journey with us. In the book, How Can I Help, there's a chapter on walking each other home. So we are each walking each other home. And so as we go through our own difficulties, there's someone to walk us home and with whom we can walk and walk home. That's what recasting is all about. And so I invite you to recast. That's what we've been doing here. And that's what we're continuing to do here. Recasting, looking at a different way, looking at ourselves in a different way, looking at our community in a different way, looking at our lives in a different way, and deciding that we are going to set our intention to be happy. We're going to set our intention to be irresistibly happy. We're going to set our intention to be happy regardless of the facts, regardless of the events, regardless of the circumstances. We set our intention to be happy, and then we start to trust God and put one foot in front of the other. And put one foot in front of the other. And that's how we open up to experience that irresistible happiness. I know that that's available to all of us. I know that that's available to this entire community. I know that's available in all of our lives. And I know that all of us can get there. One step at a time. Let's take a breath as we move into prayer. Just taking a breath in and a breath out. And just moving into that place of knowing that God is. Knowing that God is. Sometimes that's all we ever need to know, is that God is. God is all that there is. The only power, the only presence, the only mind, the only breath, the only activity, the only answer is God. This onlyness that is God is my life. This onlyness that is God is the life of each of us here this day. And so as we return over and over and over and over again to this onlyness that is God, as we return and reunite ourselves with this onlyness that is God, we release and let go of any sense of separation from God. For we can never be separate from it. Never be separate from it. And so letting go of that sense of separation, we just open ourselves to experience the allness and the fullness of God in every aspect of our lives, in every situation and circumstance, in every seemingly overwhelming loss or difficult time or challenge or issue or whatever it is that may come up. We let all that go. And as we do, we create a space for God to reveal itself as whatever it is we need. In whatever way we may need it, God shows up. And all indeed is well. And so we just breathe in this presence and allow that presence to breathe us every step of the way on every day. Knowing that as we move through our day, God always goes before us, making straight our way, in all ways and all things. And so as I open this circle of prayer, I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer. You may speak their names silently or loud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them. This prayer goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day. I know that God is in the midst of every circumstance and situation. I give such great thanks for healing that's happening everywhere. Healing that's happening right here and everywhere. For wherever God is, healing is happening always. We just open ourselves to it. Thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you, Infinite Presence. Thank you, Divine Mother. I just allow it to be now. And so it is.